In the 1970s through the 1980s, the Pentagon, in complete secrecy, started experimenting with a new type of high-perforation shell made of the heaviest, hardest, most plentiful metal around, readily available without mining costs or efforts. A metal that just happened to be sitting there in the hands of the U.S. Department of Energy. Uranium waste.
The U.S. Department of Energy and other nations that are involved in the enrichment have tremendous amounts of this waste left over, and they needed to find a use for it.
Depleted uranium rounds reached combat for the first time during the Gulf War. These rounds pierce anything known to this day, penetrating the thickest armor plates like butter. The downside: they are radioactive, contain traces of plutonium, the most toxic metal on Earth, and their debris remain radioactive for about 4.5 billion years.
Depleted uranium is a very hazardous toxic waste. For example, depleted uranium settles in the bone, it settles in the lungs, it settles in the liver, in the kidney, and also in the muscle and testicles. This is an experiment upon rats. Depleted uranium also crosses from a mother through the placenta to a fetus. All this information is widely available. However, the Pentagon, in their overwhelming desire, their passion to use depleted uranium weapons, is trying to suppress this medical research about its high toxicity.
I could go through the early reports on this issue. You know, this is one from July 1990, where they say the most exposed individuals are soldiers who go onto a battlefield after DU rounds are shot, saying that civilians and soldiers may suffer health effects from inhalation and ingestion of DU dust, and even saying that once people realize the health and environmental effects of this weapon, there may be a move to ban it. And this was July 1990. This is just 6 months or so before the war. So you have to wonder why no warnings were ever disseminated to any ground forces prior to the war, even just to say, stay away from the vehicles that have been hit. Don't go climbing on the equipment afterwards.
What the military didn't do was tell the soldiers that the ammunition used by our airplanes and our tanks during the Gulf War was made out of this highly toxic radioactive substance.
And because we didn't know about the radioactive waste being used as ammunition, people were just picking up things in the desert, whatever they could find as a war trophy. And I think that if they would have known, they would have never touched it.
More than 436,000 U.S. troops are confirmed to have entered into those areas of radioactive toxic waste. And sadly, some soldiers camped in areas contaminated by depleted uranium radioactive toxic waste for up to 2 months without any idea, without any warning at all.
I just want to say something about the Iraqis too, that I've seen a lot of photos and talked to people who've been to Iraq, and I've also seen photos of Bedouins who go out in the desert and they go to the destroyed tanks, and I've seen photos of them literally digging in the sand next to these tanks to look for scrap metal, and they've been doing this for years, and they take the scrap metal that they can find and they go and they sell it so they can buy food. This is the situation in Iraq.
If we compare the mortalities, that is, the patients died because of cancer, in 1988 we have only 34 patients died because of cancer. But in 1998 we recorded 428 patients died because of cancer. Cancer which affects elderly people now. It's seen in younger age groups. I have a patient who have cancer of the ovary, who is only 11 years old.
Cancer and death strike the children even before they are born. At the children's hospital, malformed babies happen at the frightening rate of 1 or 2 a day.
Who's responsible today? At the highest levels where the United States made the decision to produce and use uranium-238, otherwise known as depleted uranium munitions in combat.
The Department of Energy is in charge of maintaining the stockpile of depleted uranium in this country, which we have about 1.5 billion pounds. Basically what they want to do is recycle it so that they don't have to hold it anymore. It's just going to go to defense industry to be used in ammunition.
The Pentagon has good reasons to deny the toxicity of uranium waste and the contamination of both the local populations and the Allied forces.
They cannot admit that today many of us are sick, that Iraqis are sick. This is all about 2 things: liability and dollars to clean up the mess that was created around the world.
Medical tests and treatments have been delayed or denied to most Gulf War veterans in an effort to evade both moral responsibility and health care costs.
The Army spent 3 years trying to discharge me with no pension. They just kicked me out and didn't want to take responsibility for my medical conditions.
As shocking and disturbing as it is, this attitude from the Pentagon is nothing new.
The use of radioactive toxic waste, called depleted uranium, by the military is another sad chapter in a long and tortured history of the United States military. During World War II and shortly afterward, hundreds of U.S. soldiers were told to stand outside and witness atomic bomb blasts. It wasn't until the 1990s that many of these veterans stepped forward and demanded health care and benefits as a result of being human guinea pigs. During the 1960s and 70s, the United States military used a defoliant called Agent Orange that contains the deadly cancer-causing agent dioxin. This Agent Orange was sprayed on trees and shrubs in Vietnam in order to destroy all the foliage.
The debate went on for Agent Orange for years, that the Pentagon was saying no one was exposed to enough to cause any health problems. And we're in the same boat now with depleted uranium.
The amount of lies told by the U.S. government on this issue are so spectacular as to be mind-boggling.
Depleted uranium rounds have not only been spread all over Kuwait and southern Iraq, they have also been sprinkled all across Kosovo and Serbia, and are shot on a daily basis in such places as Vieques, Puerto Rico, and Okinawa, Japan, for training purposes and without